I would love to welcome Lynn Wineman, the president and chief strategist at KidGlov. Lynn draws upon over 30 years of experience working with over 100 nonprofits. She's also the host of the Agency for Change podcast, so she gives another platform for organizations to have a voice. Welcome, Lynn. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, everyone. I am so excited to see you all so early in the morning. I am going to share my slides here so we can get started. Jenna, Rob, thank you for putting together such a great day. Everyone, thanks for being here. So exciting about the $20 donations. I hope speakers get to participate in that as well, because that sounds like a great incentive. So I want to talk today about some new ideas for helping everyone reach their fundraising goals, because if you could help me with just a tiny bit of audience participation, I know everyone's got their video off, but maybe raise your virtual hands if any of these questions sound like you. Who feels a lot of pressure to have a successful end of year fundraising campaign? Raise those virtual hands if you would. All right. I think a few of you. Who believes the rules of fundraising have changed dramatically over the past few years, and I think even the last year the most? Yep. And who wants to discover new innovative strategies to engage donors and increase contributions? If you are raising your hand, you are in the right place. And you might be asking yourself, why did Rob and Jenna and the good folks at CosVox bring in this branding and advertising expert to talk about fundraising ideas? Well, I actually have a part of my career where I spent as the CMO of a human service nonprofit, and I came from the for-profit world. I thought this was going to be my dream job because it was purpose-driven. I was helping people. It was a nonprofit. How hard could it be, right? You all know the moral of that story. It was a lot harder than I expected it to be because we were resource constrained, but also I was in an environment that maybe didn't support me as a marketer. And I was finding that asking people purely for money to support a cause was more difficult than I expected it to be. So I took that as an energy source and pulled out the best tricks of the trade from for-profit marketing and said, how can we apply these to make a difference in nonprofit fundraising? And since that time, I founded KidGlov, where we're committed to serving nonprofits and do a ton of this work. And honestly, if you are feeling like the rules have changed, there's a lot of evidence for that. These stats are from an article that was in Charity Navigator earlier this year, but they're reporting that for end of year 2023, overall giving was down 20 to 30%. 10% of givers just completely vacated and didn't give anything. And that represents almost $60 billion worth of donations, which is going to make a difference to the work we do. So, you know, what I take away from these stats, let's not let them depress us. Let's let them motivate us and be real about the fact that this year, as you're looking at fundraising, you're going to have to work even harder to get a larger share of wallet from your donors. And you might even, I know we hate this in the nonprofit world, but you might even have to nudge some other nonprofits off their list to get the money that you need to fund your mission. In the article, they spoke to several reasons for this, starting with economic insecurity. We all know that over the past several years, a lot of our donors have relied on, there's been stimulus funding, there's been PPC loans, there's been ERC grants. That has helped a lot of donors come into the market. They got used to having that money, and that money is gone. We all know, we're very aware of the fact that there's a big political election coming up, and there's a lot of uncertainty as to how that's going to impact the economy. Through the last several years, we've also seen institutional distrust grow. So when people are looking to give that money, trust is key, and they're now questioning our promises more than they ever have. One of the reasons they cited was lack of post-COVID vision, which I get this. We've all worked so hard, and I say we because I help a lot of nonprofits. We've all worked so hard to survive COVID, to survive the workforce shortage, and to stay on track, but we haven't all had a chance to resettle and say, this is where we're going. And then the last thing, and I think this is a thing that what Rob just showed you can really help with, is donor and nonprofit sophistication gap. As everyone has moved more digital in the last few years, donors expect a seamless, branded user experience when they give. And some nonprofits have not had a chance to keep up with the experience that has been created by and the expectation that has been set by nonprofits. So we, even at KidGlov, knowing this is a huge part of our work, we did our own survey earlier this year that focused on 2023 end of year giving. And I just want to share a few facts from that survey too, to help level us out here. The first thing we asked, we asked people how they did in 2023 compared to 2022. And then we zeroed in on, because there was a group who increased their 2023 end of year giving by 20% or greater over the previous year. And we said, all right, these are the folks that are doing something special. What are they doing? And honestly, when we got those answers, the top three things were really the fundamentals, I think, of storytelling and messaging when it comes to fundraising. They all said we had really compelling stories. And I would say, once again, this is a good time to be collecting those stories, because a good story really opens pocketbooks. Personalized communication. We have more tools than we ever have, and donors are expecting a personalized experience, whether that is inserting their name into communications, whether it is segmenting your list for large, medium, small givers and making your asks accordingly, whether it's geographic personalization, some things to really consider. And then the third is probably the newest bit of information, and one that we're really, really leaning into, is extended and frequent timing. As you think of setting up your end of year campaign, don't think of it as a one and done. I'm going to make that beautiful direct mail piece, I'm going to send it out. Maybe there's a few social media pieces. Think of it as an extended relationship building conversation, and I'll get more into that. One really standout idea that came through our survey was incorporating a matching fund promotion into your end of year giving campaign. Maybe go find that great donor, ask them to stretch a bit, and then set that up as a match. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Those who unfortunately were on the other side of that scale, who said, hey, our donations decreased by 10% or more, some of the common factors were they didn't have strong brand awareness. So if you're coming into your donors cold and they don't know who you are or understand what you're about, it's going to be more difficult. So once again, that leads us back to relationship building. People said we had insufficient engagement strategies. Once again, this year, we're really leaning into, for our clients, how do you have a campaign that builds that relationship with a lot of smaller but connected steps? And then the residual impacts from a shaky economy. We can't control that. We just need to know that is a real thing that we're dealing with. Lastly, because I mentioned timing, in our survey, we asked nonprofits when they started and when they ended their campaigns. The bulk of us have started in November and ended in December. And I think that's been really the traditional formula. But we're hearing those that started earlier, maybe connecting to a fall event, or just getting a jump out early has been a good strategy. And then we actually had a Changemaker forum last week where we talked with several nonprofit executives, and they're all leaning into a January or February kind of second ask for those who maybe they thought would be in a very personalized touch. So think about that. Also, as you look at this chart, think about the fact that what's happening in November of 2024, a giant election. We're probably going to hit a point in late October through that election where people really aren't going to want to go to their mailboxes. They're not going to want to open their email. I think text is being used for political advertising more than ever. So if there's one takeaway from this slide, please, please, please think about how you are going to navigate around the election. For several nonprofits we're working with, we're leaning into an October start and then a pause, and then being really ready in mid-November for something very big and strategic to happen. So that is a little thing there. So what I promised you I would talk about today is 7 really fresh ideas, mostly taken from for-profit marketing, proven in for-profit marketing, to pull them over into your campaigns for this year. I am going to doubt that anyone on this list is going to be able to implement all 7. And I'm going to suggest that none of these should replace what you're currently doing, but they should augment what you're currently doing. So let's take a deep dive into some of these. I mentioned this earlier, and I think this is something those of you that are on CosVox or moving into CosVox will really benefit from. And Rob didn't ask me to say this or know I was going to say that, but it's really important to have a seamless, engaging online experience that takes your donors on a branded journey from the start to the finish. So once again, I think in the past, it has been easy to put a lot of effort into a fantastic direct mail piece. I love a beautiful direct mail piece. It has been, we focus on those emails, we focus on social media posts, but then people end up on our website to give, and it's a total disconnect, right? And I think now even more than ever, you want to make sure that everything is connected and seamless, A, because that's what donors expect, B, because if you have a significant disconnect, your donor might even question whether this is a legitimate ask or if it's a fake spam, malicious type of ask as well. So really take a look at that experience. I think a pro tip that I'm going to suggest is before you launch your campaign, take the journey yourself. Have someone send you a test email, have one send you a test social media post, click on the links, give a little bit of money yourself, whether it's $1 or your normal gift, but go through the experience and figure out where the holes are. So once again, this too is going to speak to the fact that you have to plan a little bit early, because if you are flying by the seat of your pants and everything's getting done just right at the deadline, you're not going to have the time for this. I know too, I'm going to talk about, and we've got a speaker later today that's going to talk about engaging your board. I think this is a great place for an engaged board member who has maybe some marketing or communications interest. They don't even have to have experience, but interest. Have them go through the journey with you and let them help you make improvements along the way. It's going to pull them into the fold. And at the same time, it's going to get them enthusiastic about the campaigns as well. All right. The next step to that and new idea, I don't know if anybody of you are using this, but we're suggesting automated donor engagement. And so in the for-profit world, we call this a nurture campaign. And you may have noticed if you go on to a for-profit or business-to-business website and you sign up for something free or you purchase something, you may get a series of emails following that help you on your customer journey. We're suggesting this for donor journeys. So if you are using tools that will allow you to set up an automated nurture channel, you could look at this and say, all right, once someone is given, what are some other things I can communicate with them and have it prepared and planned so that once again, when you are in the heat of end of year, you're not trying to do this all individually yourself. So if you think about a donor nurture journey, it might start with, I've given a donation online. Soon after that donation, maybe immediately after that donation, I get a thank you email. The thank you email is pre-programmed into the system. The second step might be taking a look at where's some low-hanging fruit. An email that asks your donor if their employer does a matching gift, and just letting them simply push a button or reply to the email if there is a matching gift with the employer opportunity. It's amazing what you can pick up from that little thing that they didn't know how to communicate before. Another opportunity for a nurture email, maybe the third email in your series, would be to take a one-time gift and ask if they would consider a recurring gift. That donor already buys into your mission. They already have opened up to you. It's a good time to ask very nicely if they would consider that. And then lastly, maybe the fourth email in your nurture channel would be a story that shares the impact of their gift. Thank you so much for being so generous. Here's the work that we're doing, whether it's numbers or stories or a combination of both. Think about that automated donor engagement channel. All right, idea number 3, find yourself a social media champion. I don't know I'm guessing most of you are probably following the Olympics right now. And maybe you have connected with some athletes online that are influencers. One of my favorites, if you're not following her, is Alana Maher from the American women's rugby team. She's hilarious. She posts funny little things. I've never cared so much about women's rugby in my entire life. She's built a huge following, and they have in the last week secured a major donation for U.S. women's rugby. And I think that has to be somewhat in part to her telling the story of rugby. So how does this work for us as nonprofit fundraisers? Well, ideally, find an influencer that's already in your network. So your ideal influencer is probably going to be a board member, a staff member, or maybe even someone you've served that's willing to tell the story, that will be willing to advocate on social media on your behalf. They don't even have to think of themselves as an influencer. If they share the type of content that seems like is in line with your brand, and they have a good following within your target audience, you can help them become an influencer for your campaign. You will need to meet with them. You will need to lay out clear expectations. You will need to provide them content and links. and you will need to engage with them online if you go in this direction. In some cases, you might have an influencer that is a professional influencer, and they may want to charge you money for this. You'll have to consider whether that's worth it in your budget, or see if you can't negotiate the fee as a donation to your campaign. So think about, how do you add an influencer into the mix this year to give you that extra little step? I mentioned this earlier. This was one of the standout ideas from our own survey, but think about where you can add a dynamic matching gift challenge into your campaign. Once again, I know those of you who are on CosVox have this opportunity to add in that element, but we're really suggesting you take a look at part of your campaign and bring in a donor who will match gifts. The reason this works is it builds on that same psychology of limited time offers or buy one, get one. We all are motivated to do something when there is a trigger. One idea for this, you might think about Giving Tuesday, and maybe your matching gift donor doesn't match your whole campaign, but maybe you do a Giving Tuesday blowout. Giving Tuesday, I think you all know, is in early December this year, but use this as an opportunity. Now, if you do the matching gift, you obviously have to promote it. You need to share it with your board. You need to share it with your employees. You might email your donors in advance. You're going to blow it out on social media, but consider adding that component. All right. I know you have a whole session on empowered board initiatives. So I'm just going to take a minute to talk about it, and you are going to get a whole lot more later. But I am a board member myself. I love being on nonprofit boards. And my own experience as a board member helps me understand what we need to do as marketers. So my experience as a board member is, I am very excited about the nonprofit. I'm very excited about the mission, and I'm all gung-ho about helping out. But then what happens? Work, life, I get busy, and then I can't find the materials you gave me. And then I want to send them out, but then I don't send them out, or maybe I do it in a smaller way. But I can't tell you how many times we have put together campaign materials at KidGlov to give to board members, and it never works out as well as anyone thinks it will. And I can't wait to hear the session this afternoon to get some new tips on this too. We're recommending this year that you up-level your board participation by one-on-one meetings with those board members, helping them get going, to asking them to give you a certain number of names and emails that you can just put into your funnel. And what we're working with are emails that say, Jane Smith, our board member, suggested I reach out to you. Jane supports our nonprofit because XYZ, and that has to be Jane's story. We hope you'll consider a gift this year. That way, you've taken the pressure off your board member. You've taken the chance out of this, and perhaps you are going to get some new donors that connect because of their relationship. Here's another tip. This is a little bit similar but different. We love it when a campaign or an event invitation is about to be launched. As you send those materials to your printer, or before you press send on the email, send it to your board members first. because that gets them in the know. It makes them feel special, and it increases the chance that they may talk to their friends as well, because they feel like or are educated on what you have going. All righty. Let's talk about a New Year's donor celebration. So I have a nonprofit who has done this, and it's really a great opportunity for them. And you know what? Whether it happens, it's probably not going to happen on New Year's Eve, but January and February are slow and often depressing for most people. We've gone through the whole holiday thing, and now, especially if you're in the Midwest where I live, it's cold, it's dreary. We're suggesting a celebration, and here's how you connect it to your campaign. There's a minimum donor level, whatever's right for you, a minimum donor level for people who get invited to this party. The party can be small. It maybe has some refreshments. It maybe you get a band or a comedian, some form of entertainment in, but it's a chance for people to publicly acknowledge what was given. It's a little bit of public peer pressure, but it's also an opportunity to get all your best donors in the room for a celebration in January or February when schedules are a bit more manageable. All right. The last new idea that I want to share is to kick off your end of year giving campaign with handwritten thank you cards and unique expressions of gratitude. So we all lean into thank you cards at the end of the campaign, but find your best list of donors. Find that best list of donors and start now. Start now. Have your intern help you now before you get into the thick of things. But handwritten notes are so rare these days that when you get them, it's something special. And getting that thank you card that says, "Hey, Jane Smith, Jane, thank you for giving in 2023. We really appreciate you as we kick off our end of year campaign this year. We hope you'll keep us in mind." It can be a pre-printed card. You can put an envelope in it if you would like, but that is a big way to get some share of mind at the beginning of the campaign. If you don't have the capability to do a lot of handwritten cards, maybe your list is big, another strategy that I really love is a letter that's on real letterhead that's signed with real ink. I always think a wet signature is really important, not a photocopied signature. But pre-print that thank you letter using your mail merge, your software, and so forth, but pull out the top X% of donors, whatever you can handle, and handwrite a note in the margin of that letter. That can be a really, once again, powerful personal touch that just gives you bigger share of mind that will lead to share of wallet. So those are our big ideas that we hope you can take into use this year. So one of the things too I'm going to mention is I'm always going to be a huge believer that the way you communicate your brand in words, in visuals, is going to make everything you do easier and more effective without adding to the expense of your marketing. So what I mean by that is You're going to buy the email software. You're going to create the email. You're going to create the mailer. You're going to create the postcard. You're going to do the social media. You're maybe going to do digital ads or whatever have you. If your brand is strong and consistent, that those efforts are all going to be more effective. So if you need to do work on your brand, granted, if you feel like you need a rebrand and you want to rebrand before end of year marketing, not advisable. But if you need to do some tweaks to your brand, that is a good thing to do in August before you go forward. A big part of branding is the consistency in the way that you present yourself. And consistency is important because consistency translates to trust, and consistency translates to quality. So I don't want you ever to have to tell your donors that they should trust you or that you have a quality program. They should just feel that in the way you communicate with them and you use your communications to build relationship. Because one more thing that I will say is marketing with poor branding is like wearing sweatpants to a meeting with your most important donor. It does not set you off for a strong first impression. So I'd love to open up to questions. Let's see. Wow, you guys are really active in the chat. This is amazing.
Lynn, that was fantastic. Look at all these questions and everybody is so engaged. Thank you so much for participating, everyone. Yeah, Lynn, are you able to see the questions in the Q&A or should I read them?
Let's see. I'm seeing some people who write personal notes and then do phone calls. All right. I love both. I'm going to tell you, I think that you cannot overthank your donors. Sometimes we call them RATs, RATs, random acts of thanks. You cannot overthank your donor. So if you have the opportunity to do both, I would do both. Sometimes a phone call is also a great assignment for your board members. So you write the letters because the letters have to be done. I mean, I think that not getting a thank you is kind of like when you give a wedding gift and you don't give a thank you. It leaves a bad taste in people's mouths. But if you can tap into your donors to make the calls, I think that's a really, really great way to go. Josephine Casella, I hope I said that right. You said, how do you find a donor who will make a match? That is a really great question. In some cases, I'm going to say in some cases, you probably have a donor that has really been a great advocate in the past. And I would go to those really great givers right away. Chances are they're going to give to you anyway. And so by having this conversation and stretching into the match gives them an opportunity to have a little publicity. And it also gives you an opportunity to say, hey, would you consider, if you've been a $20,000 donor, would you consider going to 25 if we can make this match work? Or if you're on the size of scale where, hey, you're looking for a $5,000 match donor, but I would go back to your list of people who have given generously in the past and start there. And once again, all of these things, I can't just stress enough. I know none of us have enough time. None of us have enough resources, but end of year giving is too important to leave to the last minute. And so everything you can do right now is going to make you more effective later on. All right. Thank you for the note on the sweatpants analogy. I think that's a good one. You know, a lot of times nonprofit boards in particular, and sometimes nonprofit leadership teams don't want to lean into the spend for high quality marketing and high quality branding. And it is a real balance with nonprofits. You never want your donor to feel like, hey, if you hadn't spent so much money on this website, or if you hadn't spent so much money on this direct mail piece, you wouldn't have to ask me for my donation. You never want that. But you need to be thoughtful, strategic, and professional. Once again, there's a lot of great research available that leans into the fact that American donors want to give to winners, right? And so that's why it's important to lean into a positive message about impact versus a kind of call for desperation. Okay, Jenny Jones, let's see. Consistency translates to trust. Yes, that is a big one. You know, sometimes it happens too. I mean, one thing that's great about being a nonprofit is that you might have a creative person or an agency who will donate pro bono work to you. And I would say don't pass that up, right? But what's hard is if they're donating to you, chances are A, you're falling to the bottom of the list. B, you're maybe not pushing them as hard as you would be to do what you know needs to be done if you were paying them. And C, it's hard to replicate that same message moving forward. So, you know, if over the course of the year, you put all your materials out on table, or you've got them on a big screen if they're digital, and they don't look like they go together, you have a problem. Even if they all have the same name and the same logo, you want to have consistency in that overall presentation. Okay, let's see here. Jackie Mayer, you said you had a campaign that's providing a match that's a great motivator for donors, that each dollar is doubled. I love that. Natalie, you asked, is there much of a difference in success with end-of-year campaigns versus fiscal year campaigns? Well, that's a really great question, Natalie, because I do believe, you know, if you're really reliant on fundraising, you probably don't want to leave it all to the end of the year. But there's some great statistics that, you know, a lot of people, particularly those of high net wealth, are looking at making a end of year donation for tax advantage. So I would say if you have to choose between end of year and end of fiscal year, I would lean into end of year. If there's a way to do both, I would lean into doing both. I mean, yes, we're all worried about over asking and we're all worried about donor fatigue, but the reality is when you look at big donors, we all get those envelopes in our mailboxes. We all get those emails. We all get those social media posts or digital ads throughout the year. So I think it's wise to think about doing multiple campaigns if you can. I also love leaning into a time of year that makes sense for what you're doing. So, you know, Heart Month, Child Abuse Prevention Month, a lot of the different health months or mental health opportunities, I would say really lean into those. Likewise, I'm guessing most of you have local giving campaigns, give to my community days or give to my state days. I would always lean into those as well, but I would say that they can't be your whole campaign, but they can be an addition to your campaign. Do you think the January, February event could work virtually? My organization is national and we do not have a home base, so any in-person event is tough for us. You know what? I mean, Heather, we are doing this event virtually, and there's quite a lot of people here. people are getting value from it. I would just say that if you are going to do a virtual event, if you're going to do a virtual event, you need to make sure that you're planning for it to be an engaging virtual event. I tell you what, I am right now really high on virtual events. I'm really high on in-person events. The type of events that I think are not working very well are hybrid events, because unless you really got a lot of resources, it's very difficult to make a hybrid event work. So as you think about a virtual event, think about what you can do while you're on the screen to make things interesting and engaging. Maybe you've got some video content you share. Maybe you've got some type of game, or there's a lot of software available that offers you attendee participation. Maybe you take a look at that as well. Oh, Maureen, look at you. I think, Maureen, Jenna, I'm giving a vote to Maureen here for participation, for summing this up. Ensure an online donor experience. Yes, yes. Set up automated donor engagements. Yes, yes. Identify an influencer. Yes, yes. Consider adding a matching gift. Yes, yes. I would say then the other things I would put in there is also take a look at a dynamic matching gift, and extraordinary donor gratitude. As I go through my notes, I'm really taking a look at how you can up level your donor engagement. All right, somebody asked me for best practices for integrating impact statements into the campaign storytelling. Well, you know what? I love the idea of having a story that also has some numbers, because then you're appealing to both the left and the right side of the brain. So if your program has particular numbers that you're highlighting in the impact statement, find a story that then leans into maybe one or two of those numbers and highlight them together. People feel like I feel like I'm just giving you all my favorite tricks here. People feel like sometimes bullet points are going to do the job, but the reality is bullet points are not memorable. Stories are memorable. So, all right, cool. Jenna, do we have time for a few more questions?
This is wonderful. We are scheduled until 11:05 Eastern, so we have 5 or 6, 7, however many minutes that is. Yeah, do you want to? I think there are a handful in the Q&A panel. If you want to maybe take a look at those. If you can't see them, I can call out a few.
For some reason, I can see the chat, but not the Q&A panel.
Okay, let me see if I can find some good ones too. Let's see.
I had too much coffee this morning and I just talked way too fast.
I know, right? So yeah, so Heather, oh, John Weiss says, any strategies for pre-launch fundraising?
I'm not quite sure, John, what you mean by pre-launch fundraising. I'm going to interpret it as maybe how to pre-launch your campaign without making an ask. I would say that any form of communication that's positive and leans into your impact is good. So pre-launch, I would say social media would be a good avenue for that. As a matter of fact, really maybe even looking into some boosted postings. Oh, great. Okay. John, thank you for giving me that because I'm struggling here. You all can hear it in my voice. All right. The pre-launch of the organization. That's exciting. So you're a nonprofit startup. How do you communicate before the launch of the organization? Well, that's a new one for me, but here's what instantly comes to mind, John. I would say that when you're doing any kind of launch, there's usually a silent phase, maybe kind of like a capital campaign. So perhaps you have a close group of advocates that you can trust. I would start talking to them early. Maybe there's some of your early donors. Maybe there's some of your first asks for board members. But I'd say one-on-one communications would be a good start. Two, I do think you could do some teaser emails, some teaser social media to start to build a social media following. And a teaser campaign would not give them the whole story. It wouldn't tell them the name. It wouldn't launch them the brand, but it would be starting to tell a story of something coming soon. So if there's a particular problem that your nonprofit is solving, start by talking about that problem and building up the idea that that problem exists and there's going to soon be a new way to solve it. And then when you launch, start to tell the rest of that story. Another idea for you would be in the week before launch would be to find some of your favorite media reporters and do some embargoed interviews so that when you do the launch, you've instantly then got some media that's ready to go on the day of your launch as well.
Awesome.
I hope that helps.
Yeah. It's exciting to be starting new. I think another person here as well had a question on building a donor program from the beginning, so that's helpful. Any ideas on avoiding donor fatigue?
I think the biggest thing for avoiding donor fatigue is don't stop talking, but think of interesting new ways to tell your story and share your impact. And I think this is one where you want to position the fact that you are helping whatever it is related to your mission. So I think one way to look at that is to have some communications in your mix that are not making an ask, but are purely just sharing positive stories and positive impact. Social media is a good place for this. Email is a good place for this, but really, thinking about collecting your positive stories and your impact numbers and just getting that message out as much as possible. You don't want your donor to feel like every time you're coming to them, your hand is outstretched so far that they want to turn around. So sharing some of those positive stories, I think, is good. How do you revive a donor that last gave 5 years ago? Man, that's a tough one. Like, I don't know if I'd give up on them, but if they're a big donor, that might be the time for somebody to make a personal phone call. I think there's still a place in this world for personal communications. Phone calls, emails is a good way to go. I think another way to go is, and a lot of associations do this. So with associations, if they have lapsed members, they might tap into their board and say, hey, this member has lapsed. Does somebody on the board know them that would be able to make a personal touch? So perhaps that's a way to engage your board as well, to find a few key lapsed donors and say, hey, would somebody be willing to make a phone call or take them to coffee? A phone call makes you nervous because if they just say no or get angry, I get that. But the reality is you can then move on, right? So I think that if you make a phone call, think about how you're going to set up that phone call. The phone call, I think, does not start with, hey, you gave 5 years ago and you haven't given now. I think the phone call starts more with, hello, Jane Smith. This is Heather from XYZ nonprofit. You have supported us in the past, and I'm reaching out to you to say thank you for that. And I have some new news about our impact or our programs that I wanted to let you know. And then maybe as you get through the conversation, I see you haven't given in a few years. Can we keep you on our list for this year, or can we count on you this year? And then once again, if they say no or they get angry, then you know they're a no and you can take them off your list and move on. Recognize, Heather, that it's not personal towards you. It's just where they are in their life, where they are with the organization. Yep, call with something of value. Jane, that is such great, great, great advice.
Yes, thank you so much, Lynn, for all this incredible just advice and insight. And I know we didn't have time to answer all the questions, but that's okay. Lynn, what's the best way for people to reach you if they want to get in contact?
Absolutely. I will say, if anybody wants to work on these ideas, I am open to brainstorming and can probably handle the first 10 of you. So reach out to me on email or on LinkedIn. I'm on email and LinkedIn all the time. I'd love to talk with you. Or if you use that QR code or go to the KidGlov website, we have a ton of free resources, and we'll be sharing these slides and some free resources as well to come in the final packet.